Before the Khmer Rouge, you had 2 grandmothers, 3 older brothers, a younger sister. You ran barefoot along pepper plantations and salt fields. You worked at the family store selling coffee, cigars, textiles. On balmy days, if school was out and business was slow, you drifted along ribboning river bends. You ate fresh durian from Boo's farm, on the banks where 3 rivers converged, licking your fingers clean under the shade of palm fronds. When your village was bombed, your family fled to Phnom Penh. While civil war raged in the countryside, cinema flourished in the capital city. Your brothers took you to the theaters, where you watched Crocodile Man, The Children Killer, The Snake King's Wife, Parts 1 and 2. The next day, you recounted plots, dialogue, word for word, and gory details to earnest school friends. Your brothers went to the discotheques. At home, they played records by Sin Sisamuth, who belted sappy lyrics like, "Don't think I've forgotten, I'll always remember you, all the things you've said to me." Remember his voice, your brothers told you. He'll put Cambodia on the map. This legend will live forever. During your darkest moments, being separated from your parents, watching your sister die of starvation, you recalled that crooning voice. You would later learn that Sin Sisamuth was killed in the genocide, his master recordings destroyed, but his voice never disappeared from your memory. You fled the killing fields with your family, crossing the border into Thailand and then a refugee camp in the Philippines. Catholics spoke to you about Jesus and handed out copies of the Holy Bible. As weeks stretched to months, your father hand-rolled joints from pages torn from the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. By the time you learned of your sponsorship to America, he had smoked the entire New Testament. In 1982, you landed in St. Paul, Minnesota, with what remained of your family, your parents and 10-year-old brother, Savan. The rest had disappeared. It was the middle of a blustery snowstorm. Puffs of clouds left your mouth every time you chanted, "USA, #1." Miss Julie, your English teacher at the refugee camp, had taught you that phrase when she learned you were leaving, her blue, gentle eyes welling up. At the airport in Minnesota, Jesuits greeted you with toiletries and Salvation Army clothing. The day you arrived in America was the first time you had been on an airplane, the first time someone called you a survivor, first time you saw snow. To stave off the cold, you wore gloves, earmuffs, a knitted scarf that was as suffocating as it was warming. When you all gathered into a prayer circle, you gave thanks to God and Ronald Reagan. Miss Julie had shown you photos of the Statue of Liberty, Golden Gate Bridge, Mount Rushmore, but you saw none of those. You lived in a bitter cold city of pelting snow and black ice. You heard about families robbed of cash and jewelry that they've hemmed into the lining of their clothes. Crime was especially rampant at the start of the month when welfare checks were mailed to households. And boys as young as your brother were jumped into gangs. You were instructed to come straight home, never to open the door, not to talk to strangers, even if they were Khmer. You didn't need to be told twice. The perpetrators of the genocide were your own people. You enrolled in the public high school. Even if you hadn't missed formal schooling for the past 7 years, English eluded you. You couldn't command your tongue to pronounce R's. You didn't understand idioms. In ESL class, you managed to befriend a shy Khmer girl, but then she relocated to California. So you hung around some Hmong girls who tolerated you at lunch. Sometimes you spoke to them in broken English, but most days went by when you didn't say a word. You often cried yourself to sleep, wondering what kind of a God would allow your people to perish. You were haunted by the image of your best friend being dragged away, the stench of rotting flesh in mass graves. You dreamt of your sister, Sophia. Sometimes she was alive and fully grown, other times immortalized at the age of 4. Once she was dismembered. But every time you woke in a cold sweat, with pain lodged deep into your chest cavity. During sleepless nights, you replayed Sophia's final moments. You had stolen a palmful of rice grains to nourish her gnawing hunger, but it was too late. Neighbors implored your parents to abandon her in the nearest hospital, where there was no food or medicine. All the doctors had been taken away for execution. Please leave her there, they begged, fearing that once she died, her spirit would haunt their work camp. You had held Sophia until her bone-sucked body grew stiff and cold. At dusk, in a clearing at the jungle's edge, your father buried her in a hole he dug with his bare hands. Your mother stifled her wailing. She begged the universe for Sophia to be reborn as her child in the next life. There couldn't possibly be so much suffering in the next one. Your misty eyes traced the treetop canopy and noted where the sun was rising, trying to commit the burial spot to memory. If you survived, you promised to return her remains to your village, to enshrine her in the white sandstone stupa that, for generation after generation, housed your ancestors' ashes. You promised. Then the faraway memory of that song lulled you back to sleep every single time. Don't think I've forgotten. I'll always remember. Eventually, the weather in St. Paul turned tame and temperate. Your bones felt like they were defrosting. You could finally breathe without inhaling shards of biting air. The pattering of rain sounded like the opening tempo of a melody, or a kindly neighbor tapping on your window. Rhythm began to emerge in your routine. School, home, dinner, cleaning, homework. On weekends, you went first to the Asian market for jasmine rice, fish sauce, yam, herbs, and then the American one for milk, bread, cereal. You learned to ask the butcher for the manager's special, cheap cuts of meat, which you promptly stored in the freezer at home. Every Sunday, you attended morning service, though you remained ambivalent about God. Soon, there were droves of new students at school, shell-shocked refugees fleeing a region laden with landmines and carnage. Among the boat people and mountain tribal people, there were your own people. Wide noses, startled dark round eyes, skin the color of sand and silt. You mustered the courage to approach them with the same one-worded opening line. Kamai? Over time, you were surrounded by friends of your own. Sok Ling from your province, Niang, who called herself Nancy after the First Lady, Chanda, who had a snagged tooth you all envied. Together, you joked and jabbed, scrunched up your noses at Sloppy Joe's and cheese pizza. You tutored them in English, even if it still sounded garbled in your mouth. They were perplexed by verb tenses, plural forms, how words like tough and thought and though were spelled so similarly, yet pronounced so differently. You never had to explain yourselves to each other. An off day, a dislodged memory, abruptly bursting into sobs while recollecting the past, even if it was during happier times, before Pol Pot. All you could do was tend to each other with platitudes. It's okay, don't think that way. It's all behind us now. There was an understanding of the deadening weight each of you carried, the magnitude of your losses, even if you didn't have the words for it in either language. One day, your brother Savon came home craving a Big Mac. He'd seen a billboard by his schoolyard. When your mother said there was no money to spare after rent, he pulled out a shiny penny. You offered to help him save up, even though you yearned for the aroma of your homeland. Steamed catfish curry, beef noodle soup, lemongrass, kaffir lime leaves. The two of you spent months scouring sidewalks, bus seat cushions, checkout lanes for coins that you collected into a plastic bag. When you finally had enough, $1.30, you both sprinted to McDonald's. At the counter, Savon held onto the bag with one hand as he clawed coins out with the other. You counted and grouped them into tens. Neither of you realized how heavy the bag had become, that it was wearing thin and the seam was tearing until it sent all of the coins clanging on the floor. The restaurant fell silent. Heads swiveled, drawing what seemed like 1,000 gazing eyes. Then a chorus of laughter rang out, punctuated by applause from some older boys in the back. Savon's bottom lip quivered. You couldn't bear to see him cry, so you dropped to your knees and raked the coins toward you. An employee stepped from behind the counter and stopped you. He said he'd sweep up the coins. Did you understand correctly? He gestured at his broom and then placed your order, a Big Mac, with a free side of fries and medium Coke. He upgraded it to a meal. Taken aback, you thanked him over and over, meekly but effusively. Once the iconic red tray arrived, Savon held the burger. How big it looked in his small hands. He offered to share it with you, but you declined. No, it was his to savor. Instead, you picked at the salty fries and sipped the Coke, which pricked your throat as it went down. Savon grinned toothily, declaring it the best meal of his life. "This is American dream," he said, another phrase from Miss Julie. "American," you said, correcting him. You muttered the word several times, first stretching it out, American, then running it together, American. Savon echoed you. You took turns saying it, then singing it, then in unison, between bites and slurps and chomps. You said it louder until you squealed with laughter, until it no longer sounded foreign in your mouth. American. Thank you.